Adversity, something that will make or break an athlete or a coach for that matter in any type of competitive setting in the sports realm or even in the corporate setting, anywhere in life, really. How do you deal with adversity? Coming from a mixed martial arts background, I was a professional fighter for 10 years, fought for Bellator MMA a number of years, went on to coaching, became an award winning MMA coach. One of the biggest things people always ask us was, how do you deal with such high risk situations? You know, risk of injury, risk of loss. How do you deal with the pressure? Now, personally, I feel that pressure is subjective. Some people feel pressure warming up for competition, some people feel pressure in competition. Me personally, I always felt more pressure when I was training for the fight rather than being in the fight. That's for another video for another day, though. But what I'm getting at is people find pressure in different areas. I'm telling you right now, I feel more pressure recording this than I ever did being in a fight. But adversity is almost a constant. You're going to see adversity almost everywhere. Not everything, well, hopefully it would, but not everything is always going to go your way. And it's how you deal with that adversity, how you make the adjustments to get back to being progressive, to get being able to stand your ground and pulling out a win. Now, I've developed a system where I feel that there's 4 main areas to deal with coaching adversity or training adversity to develop this area and not be having to deal with it so much come game time or fight time. Now, keep in mind, I came from American Top Team. We were the leading mixed martial arts gym in the world. A lot of this conversation that I'm going through right now, I've had with some of the coaches over there, namely Dean Thomas, who's a world champion coach, formerly ranked UFC lightweight, and Mike Brown, who was a featherweight world champion, as well as award-winning MMA coach and multiple-time world championship coach. A lot of their input's going to be here. But again, getting into how we deal with it in mixed martial arts, how do we deal with adversity? Really, there's no time to think about what just happened in that fight. There's no time in the cage to think about what's behind you. You can only think about getting back to center, sticking your ground, and trying to keep yourself safe or moving forward. That is, I think, because we have so little time to think of it, kind of drains out that outside noise where we can't think about what happened behind us. We don't have the time to waste energy. We don't have the energy, for that matter, to go backwards. We can only go forward or stand our ground. So that's what I think is the important part to realize here, and why we are forced to train our minds to think about dealing with adversity in a cage. So let's go over the first part, which is, I think, is the most obvious. I also personally, I think it's the most important. However, there's been several coaches over the years. One that comes to mind is Eric Nixick, that they make their bones with coaching through adversity in other areas of this. But me, I like dealing with phase 1, which would be in training for adversity in the fight. First, before you really train for adversity as a coach, you really have to know your athlete. You really have to know where they're going to be put in these adverse situations. Some athletes are okay, let's just stick to MMA for now. Me, I was a wrestler, so I didn't find many adverse situations in the wrestling realm or even in the grappling realm, but I found myself in trouble standing up on our feet. So my coaches would put me through a more challenging or situational training where I would have to do more stand-up training. So even before we got there, though, like, really learn your athlete, not just what they have trouble with, how they respond to that trouble, how they respond positively to that trouble. That's where you could really make the connection on how to go forward. Because some athletes, they love being yelled at, they love being rah, 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 they love being in their face. Other athletes, no, they really like to be coddled. They like to be, they like that pat on the back, and that's important to recognize. I know some coaches don't like that, but you know what? I've found as a coach, it's really not on me. It's really not what I like to do. It's what the athlete likes to do. I need to get their connection. I need to get connected with them in order to get them to dig into my program and move forward. So this is where you build that rapport with your athlete in your training. And once you build that rapport, let's go forward with training for adversity. Now, there's 2 different times. So now, specific adversity in training, like I mentioned, what the athlete might not be bad at, or if they have a competition come up against a specific opponent where they might be in these adverse situations, where they might be in where they might be in a challenge come fight time. You could do the situational training in there, like me. Like I said, with the stand up, with the striking. A lot of people, they had trouble with wrestling against the cage, so we would put them against the cage in that single leg position and give them an awareness, coach them through it, coach them through. Or obviously, we drill to learn exactly what we're going to do in that situation. And before we even go live, we make sure we're all on the same page. This is the technique we're going to use in this situation. So come fight time, we are ready for this situation. We know you hear what's coming out of my mouth. You know exactly the instruction, what I'm looking for when I say it, so we can gain ground. Now, that's really important to recognize that a lot of people don't. And on top of that, since we're getting into the latter part, is a good time to reference the coach. You have to be the same coach through all levels of adversity. Maybe you could show a little bit more excitement in phase 1 and phase 4, but definitely not in phase 2 and 3. You have to be the same level of energy, because you could add adversity to your athlete if you are not, if you're getting too excited or too down. Then they're going to be like, what's the change? It's going to trigger something in their head that there's a change in my coach. That means there should be a change in me. Let them be the athlete they were in training that they will be in the fight. That's your job as a coach, to get them there. So you need to be the coach that you were in training, that you were come fight night or come game time. And then after. All right. So now we're going to be the same coach we were. We developed that rapport with our athlete. We go into the fight. We get into the fight. Fighter gets rocked. We didn't see that coming. Now adversity strikes. So how do we coach through that? All right. This is why you have to be the same coach that you were during training camp. We got to keep our athlete calm. As Mike Brown said, what's your biggest advice here? Relax, relax, and relax. We got to stay calm. We got to just gain our footing. We got to stay safe. We got to stay in the fight. It's not the time when this is what I'm talking about in this specific situation. See, in MMA, the consequences could stop the fight right then and there. So we can't try to make something out of nothing, because we could put ourselves in a worse situation. So there's often times where, let's say we get rocked, opponent has our back, has us in a submission. What are we gonna do from there? What is the fighter gonna do from there? Can't make something out of nothing, because then you could risk everything and the fight could be over. So it's important to get the fighter to relax. It's also why it's important to be in good shape. And then once you're there, you learn to just chew. I say chew clock to my athletes. Chew clock. Take time. Just get to recovery. Maybe see the end of the round. Things like that. What do you do? What situations? If we're standing, try to tie them up. If we got dropped, get to a safe situation with the guard. That's why jiu-jitsu was invented in the first place, to stay safe in a fight. Whatever the case is, whatever you trained before, that's what you're having your athlete do right then and there. Now, phase 3. Let's say we got through this adversity. Now we have a 1-minute break in between the rounds. This is pretty interesting here, because I think that this stage gets overlooked a lot, and it's not recognized, but it's constantly there. Phase 3. You got in baseball, you got in between the innings. Maybe there's a mound visit. In football, the defense comes off the field before they go back on while the offense is on. In fighting, we have our round change. We have our 1 minute. So right then and there, again, coach needs to be the same coach. What changes need to be made? What adjustments? Let's not say changes. Changes is a big word in this situation. What do we have to tweak? What do we have to adjust in order to implement our game plan going into the fight? Now, that also matters on the fighter's identity. Again, that's a past video you guys could check out. But you have to be able to connect with your fighter to make sure that they know that they're in this fight and what they have to do to gain ground. Now, Dean Thomas, when I spoke with him about this, he likes to use this time to take adversity as a win. All right, you got through it. You've been through this before. Now this is our game now. This is our time. Hard parts behind us. That's what he likes to do. Me, I like to just remain calm. I like to recognize that they faced this adversity, that they were rocked, that they got beaten up on the ground, that they almost got choked out. I like to recognize that with the adjustments I want to see made. Maybe their hand was a little low. They got to keep their hands higher. Maybe they shot from too far away and opened up from a guillotine. And I don't just say you shot from too far away. That's the other thing, is tell them what they got to do to not shoot from too far away. Often there's times where coaches try to be so quick and direct that they're actually creating a whole mess of questions for the fighter or the athlete. So instead of saying a shot from too far away, just we need a jab to get close distance for our takedowns. Or we need to keep that right hand up so we don't get dropped again. We need to move our head when we stop moving our feet. Things like that. Reiterate the instruction that you did in fight camp, because then the memory kicks in and then they can go forward. Okay. And then from there, if you notice something that the opponent was doing, you could throw that in, but make sure that make sure we're focusing on me and my fighter. Make sure we're focusing on what we want to do, not so much what they're doing, and how we could just slip in on those holes. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So then we have fight time preparation. We have adversity when it strikes, phase 2, and then phase 3, adversity in the middle. Now, here's stage 4. I feel stage 4, this is the time where you can get a little excited with your athlete, because the dust is kind of settled. And you could also get excited too in stage 1 when you're complimenting, or when you're trying to be complimentary of the work they're doing. It's really important. Me as an athlete, I never like to pat on the back. I just wanted to make sure I was doing the right thing. That being said, though, that's just me and that's my problem. That's what I want. For fighters, for baseball players, football players, athletes, they deserve that pat on the back. They're working really hard for you, coach. That's what I realized. And that was my fault. Something I had to learn early on in my career. They deserve that pat on the back. And when they get that pat on the back and they recognize what they're doing something good, they're going to keep doing something good. If you don't give them that pat on the back, then they might not think what they're doing is good, and then they'll stop doing it altogether. That's just something that I've come across. So we give them that pat on the back. Or let's say we're reviewing fight tape. This is phase 4 review. We're going over the game. We're going over the fight. We're watching tape, and you see this? Oh, great shot. See, you close the distance with jabs. See, you slipped the punches and shot, and you slipped the punches through a counter 2-3. This is what we were working on. Your hands were up. Okay. So that's when you can get excited. And now you could show a little irritation too. I show a little irritation too when there's certain areas. Sometimes there's this thing that happened in a fight the fighter can't control. That's adversity 101. Unfortunately, we never planned for it to happen, and that's what's going on. But let's say that a mistake is happening that is either constantly happening in training that you try to get their attention on, because that does happen. Trust me. You have to make sure you got their attention. I remember one time I kind of laid into a kid because he was making this mistake for months. And then we get into the fight. He loses the fight. He got rode out by a wrestler. He wasn't escaping correctly. So, oh, man, I really got to work my stand-ups. Like, I've been telling you that for 3 months. Why do you think we've been working on this? All right, now guess what we're going to work on when we get back in the gym next week? Things like that's my level of excitement. Okay, but I always leave on a positive note too. Especially when they lose. Fighters are already down. They don't need their coach, their confidant. They don't need him being against them either. They really don't. I know some fighters, some coaches. Oh, screw this! I'll talk to you soon. But I was never like that. I want them to know that I'm there for them. I got their back. So I always leave it off on a positive note. What we took from here, what you did right, what we can grow from here. And then after I say that, actually, before I even say it, I give them the opportunity to say it first. Then they said it. Okay, I'm going to work on my takedown defense. I'm going to work on my escapes. I'm going to work on moving my head. Now we agree. Now we're in agreement. Now, remember when you said you were going to work on this? We decided that together. We're going to work on this so we don't face the same adversity going forward. So that's what I got with that. So there's your 4 phases of adversity. The main point, mixed martial artists, the reason why we see it a little more than people is because we don't have any time. The reason why we deal with it better than others, we don't have time to think about it like other sports have. We only have time to think about staying safe and going forward. It's important in phase 1 to develop that coach-athlete relationship with your fighter, or coach-athlete relationship with your athlete, so that you have trust in the game plan going forward and what you're going to implement. Be the same coach no matter what phase it is, although there is flexibility with phases 1 and 4. And then touch on all 4 of those aspects, because you really use them in all other types of sports, as well as in other types of professional and personal settings. Preparation, in-time adversity, adjustment and break-in adversity, and review.